Now your expectations are changing. Now you're just sliding down this road of seller thinks it's worth $6 million now. You think it's worth $5 million. You can ride that road all the way. Welcome to the Dirt Podcasts. I'm Miles Solomon. Every week I share my perspective on commercial real estate and the business of trading dirt. Let's get into it.
Nothing in this podcast is legal, tax, or investment advice. It's for entertainment only, loosely inspired by real estate, and any resemblance to actual people, deals, or outcomes is accidental or aggressively fictionalized. Talk to your attorney, CPA, and advisors before acting on anything you hear.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am a grumpy boy this week. Boy, oh boy. Let's see what's going on. I have my grand presentation in front of the Historic Council of Highland Park this Thursday at 6 p.m. If anybody feels like showing up and seeing LA politics at work, I highly encourage it. I'm like 99% sure that they are going to deny my permit, which is just hysterical to me because the garage was demolished over a year ago. And I'm applying for a retroactive review. I've talked about it before. I'll talk about it again. I'll keep talking about it until either I get my permit or I burn down City Hall. But I got the agenda today with that property or with that subject on it from the great people at Highland Park's Historic Committee. And I can just tell it's going to get denied. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got mediation on Friday for a property. I can't get too much into it because we've been in a lawsuit for a while. But long story short, I was involved with the purchase of a contaminated property, and the people who contaminated it have been fighting us for a long time. So we're meeting on Friday to see if we can come to a deal. So that's Friday. Today, I did a nice walk. Well, before I talk about today, there's a couple other things I'd like to complain about. All self-inflicted, by the way, so I expect no sympathy or mercy from anybody. But I also have, let's see, quite the cash crunch going on. I've got a flip that one of my partners and I are buying. We're in escrow for right now, which is looking like it's going to be a skinny deal. I think we'll be lucky to make, if we can make 50 grand split or maybe 100, but highly unlikely for about 90 days of work. But pretty high risk. I'm interested in doing it because, I want to keep money moving. I want to keep active. But flipping is kind of the opposite of what I do for regular work. And it's speculative. And speculation is extremely dangerous in real estate. It's really easy to get absolutely wrecked when you speculate on property. I've talked about it before, but people always like to ask you what the value of something is going to be, or what do you think of, am I buying at the right price, blah, blah, blah. And it's all speculation. You can give an informed opinion, but it's speculation. And I think flipping houses especially is like the personification of speculation. And so you can make some money, but you can also lose a lot, especially if the market changes. And we already know the market's going down. We know it's going down every few months, if not every month. So the fact I'm still buying a house and looking to flip it to someone is ridiculous. But my partner is extremely experienced. He's probably done 300 or 400 houses in East LA. He probably has the best aesthetic taste of anybody that I know. And he's just really good at what he does. And so I think 90% of the reason I'm doing it is because I want to be involved in a deal with him. I want to learn from him. I want my girlfriend, who's my partner in other stuff, I want her to get exposure and learn from him. And I want to show him that, we can be a good partner and help. So I think that's mostly why I'm doing it. It's like a pay to play thing. Sometimes if you want to partner with certain people or get to certain people, you've got to invest with them or put your money where your mouth is. So I got that going on. And then obviously this ranch I've talked about, which literally makes no sense. But again, too late, already doing it. I'm excited about it. I'm happy about it, but I'm also, a part of my reptilian brain is just going like, what are you doing? This is not an investment. This is, well, it's an investment in your health or your happiness, as my girlfriend would say, but it's not a financial investment, really. Best case scenario, I can look at it as speculation. I mean, that's what it is, speculating that the value of the land will be higher one day. But it's not like core real estate that I normally do. So again, it's a tricky time because, like I said, cash crunch between those two, and a cash crunch between the lawyer fees for the mediation or the lawsuit and the historic people. Until you've spent 10 grand a month or 15 grand a month for lawyers, you have not lived in America. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. I think of it like, what do you call that when you pay someone to like dominate you or like whip you? It's like a form of like self, I don't know. I've never done that. Later on in life, I'm sure I'll try it, but so far I haven't. But it's something like that. It's like this version of like where you like it, you want to do it, but it also hurts a lot and it continues to hurt. And you're also asking yourself why you're doing this and why are you letting this person do this to you? It's like that. You know, the attorney is working on your behalf. They're doing what they can for whatever the legal battle is, but they're charging you for it. And every time you talk to them, they're charging you for it, every email and they're just like working. Seemingly they're all workaholics because they're just working all the time, and you pay for every minute of that. So it's a unique pleasure dealing with attorneys and having, ongoing lawsuits. It's extremely expensive, and the bill, it's not like you can roll it out 30 days or 60 days. You're paying as you go. So whenever I get into a position where I'm a high risk guy, we all know that, but whenever I get in a position where I have many things going on at once and a lot of money going out, in big chunks, little chunks, and all the chunks, you start to look at like your forward, projections, if you could call it. That's a really generous way of putting it, as if I'm really disciplined in projecting my 12-month cash flow. I'm not. I'm just trying to make the best decisions I can at the time and close more deals, make more money, and hope it all goes well. But whenever you're in a position where I'm in a position where there's a bunch of these different ongoing cash requirements, I've got a mortgage for $4,000 on one property, $8,000 on another property, a few rental properties that, $10,000 a piece. You add it all together, that plus the expense of running your business, assistant utilities, all the other things, you burn a lot of cash. And then you have add these big chunks to it, like buying a property or, that you expect the money back one way or another. You're going to, the flip, we're obviously going to sell. I'm going to get that money back. You think, you hope. But cash flow is king. I've heard so many people talk about it. It's true. If your forward projection's off by $1 and you can't pay that one person, and then you can't pay the next person, it snowballs really quick. Or if something happens, like you don't get paid, the flip doesn't go well, we lose that $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever it is. When you get in a position like that where something goes wrong, I think I've talked about it. Maybe I've dreamt about it, but it's walking a tightrope. And that's kind of the way I live, baby. Fast loose. But there are moments like this week where my patience are very, very fucking thin with everything. So I've been going through that, trying to not lash out at the people around me, because I'm the only person to blame when it comes to this stuff. However, it's hard to think about other things when you have so much going on. I think of it like RAM space on a computer. Man in the machine. You've got a certain amount of RAM. I remember there was a guy, used to read him, blogger. I think he talked about how you had limited fucks to give. If you had a bag of fucks, you could only give so many out. You can only care about so many things. Same concept. You only have so much operating space on your hardware. And in times like these where you have all these different things going on at once, and you're also thinking about the future and thinking about that tightrope and stuff, it just makes it, I think it's a personality defect of my own. Some people are very good with stress and super cool and chill. And other people are edgier. I would put myself on the far edgy side of that, where when I get in these moods where I'm trying to make sure I don't make any big mistakes or small, when I try to keep everything going and keep it operating smoothly, I get very frustrated when other people don't have the same attention to detail and care. And it comes out more, I think, in these times when people are oblivious or, not respecting of that same kind of attention to detail. I'm looking at my sister right now. I'm not talking about you, Maddie. You're good. She's looking here. She's staring at me like, I'm not talking about you. You're doing great. I just mean in general. So, yeah, like I said, Grumpy Boy. Back to today's current matters, though. Enough of all of that complaining. I did a tour today on a deal I presented these guys about 8 months ago. I think the deal started at $8 million. A big metal building, just under 2 acres. The building itself is like 40,000 feet. My buddy Tony Naples is selling it. They had a failed escrow. They've had a couple failed lease negotiations. I showed it 6-7 months ago when it was at $7.5-8 million. I told the guys I thought it was worth like maybe $6 million. Now they've gone through all this drama. The market's been going down. Everything seems right for us to make a deal. My guys offered, I want to say $5.5 million back then. I've been telling them it's coming, just wait for it. We did the tour today. We had all the big dogs. We had the acquisitions manager. We had the head money guy, the guy whose money is behind all of their properties, and their local acquisitions guy. Had Tony there. We walked through the building. Everything's great. We're talking about the plan, and then at the end, I think they said like $4.5 million or something. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I've been working for, I don't know, 7-8 months, might even be longer, to get us to like where we could actually make a deal around $5.5-6 million. Now your expectations are changing. Now we are just sliding down this road of seller thinks it's worth $6 million now. You think it's worth $5 million. You can ride that road all the way down to the bottom. And by the way, you don't get a deal done ever. Where the seller thinks it's worth 5.5, buyer thinks it's worth 4.5, on and on. It can keep going. That as long as there's a $500,000, $1 million spread, that spread can go for years on a property. And during that time, someone who will either pay what it is worth to them will come along, or someone who will make a mistake and overpay will come along. But regardless, it will sell. I've seen it so many times. It's very, very rare. The property's got to be a special piece of shit, or the circumstances have to be exactly perfect for you to close that gap without either party conceding. I mean, it's got to, or something's really got to go wrong in the market or with the property. So, end of the tour, my guys are like, what, $1 million less than they were 6 months ago? Their pricing 6 months ago should have been today's pricing. That was the expectation. But it didn't go that way. And that happens sometimes. So either they need to come to reality and realize, I think one of the guys, I love him. He's a dear friend of mine, but I think he said, you know, he doesn't want to work that hard for a 6.5 cap. And I said, where can you buy a 6.5 cap? Where? Tell me where. Around here. Where can you buy a 6.5% return for a good building around central LA? You fucking can't. You can't. And what did he say? 4221 Bandini Boulevard. And I said, I sold you that property. I know what that deal was. And this is not that deal. That was such a complicated, once in a decade deal. And yes, it worked out and blah, blah, blah. But that's not this deal. You have to buy, sometimes you got to buy bruised vegetables. They're not always going to be fire sale, you know, rotten, whatever. So without blowing up, I just said, hey, I sold you that deal. You know that was a freaking one-off. This is not a one-off. You don't need to steal every deal. You can just get a good deal and call it at that. And he basically said, no, we have to steal it. And so it got me thinking. I talked to his partner who stayed a little bit after, and his partner was talking to me about how investors got to work extremely hard in this market. That's true. That's valid. And I have a lot of respect for these guys because they've been doing this for way longer than I have. And it is extremely easy to get smoked in real estate. So to own, they have built a multi-billion-dollar portfolio from, I mean, I'm not saying it's rags to riches, but it is phenomenally more valuable now than it was when they bought it. When they bought it, they put it together piece by piece. So I have a lot of respect for those guys. But also, you know, it's like I said, I think that when people are extremely successful in real estate by doing those kind of deals where they really get a phenomenal deal, it clouds their judgment on, they have enough money to be buying good deals and good real estate. And not every deal has to be an absolute home run. They can afford to buy doubles and triples, and that's good real estate. And that's how you grow, in my opinion, that's how you grow a portfolio. That's how you grow your relationships with brokers, your presence, your value. You can't just buy home runs because, you know, especially nowadays, there are a lot of competitors for home runs. And the next time I have a home run deal, I genuinely, Jason, if you're listening to this, I want you to know, next time I have a home run deal, I'm going to remember the guys who took the doubles seriously too, so that, you know, I can pay that back to them because they're also feeding me. To stay in this business, I need to make deals. To make money, I need to transact properties. And not every property is going to be a triple banger. So there's a relationship side to brokerage too. I'm not saying buy this deal for me. Fuck that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, why, if I've got multiple guys, I've got a laundry list of guys that will buy home runs. I mean, a laundry list. So if I'm looking at that laundry list, am I going to start with the guy who's been active, who's been in the market, putting in their time, buying different deals from me? Am I going to start with that guy? Who's paid his dues and is serious about running a business? Or am I going to go to the guy that just wants to steal it, to the middle or the bottom of the list? I think we all know the fucking answer to that. And I think I could say that to them and they would say, you're right. But still, we're still just going to do what we're going to do, which is fine. But I'm going to remind him of that. Next time he complains, how come you give so-and-so, you know, these opportunities? Well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's because these other guys are playing all weather, all the time, all the deals, and they're not just like, they have to slam dunk, win every single one. So it's frustrating because, me sitting here, I'm going, I know that this is a great real estate. It's a great opportunity. Is it a deal of a century? No, but it's a good deal, and it will prove to be, especially when you have money and power to last in this market, in 10 years, it will be a great purchase. But it's frustrating because I'm just the broker. So when it comes to these big deals, there's nothing I can do about it. The only thing I can do is find another guy, find someone that sees the vision. I can find a tenant. If I found a tenant for it and I had it all lined up, but I'll tell you what, a part of me thinks if I found a tenant for this, I would think twice about if I were going to sell it to those guys, because they grind everything. They grind the fees, they grind me. So, am I going to sell it to them? Or if I found a tenant tomorrow who's willing to lease it and I can make this a in-place 6.5 cap or whatever it is from day one, am I going to call those guys or am I going to call, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But that's the position you're in as a broker. You try to be impartial. You try to give the best advice you can without coming off as arrogant or an asshole. But when I'm Grumpy Boy and my patience are really thin, it's hard to put on the salesman face and just say, okay, whatever you guys are comfortable submitting with, do it. When what I really want to say is, don't fucking bother submitting an offer at $4.5 million. Okay. Let's talk. If it's still available in a year, we can talk then. That's what I'd like to say, but I don't say that. And so, that's the duality of brokerage. You have to be real. You have to be honest. But there's no reason to unnecessarily burn bridges. And you have to, I think you're constantly managing other people's lives, expectations. I get at least half a dozen calls every day from clients that are like regulars that I talk to every single day about something. And most of it is about their problems. Usually not life problems sometimes, but problems with this, problems with that. But those clients, 90% of the year is doing free work. 95% of the year is doing free work. But that 5% of time spent on those other deals can be huge deals. That's how I run my business. And I do it with, a lot of attention and care and detail for those things. And I make the time. I don't blow them off. I don't say I'll call them back and call them back in a few days. I make time and I do it consistently. And I think every broker that runs a good business runs it just like that. You have to give time. You have to give free time and free energy to all your clients. Well, let me put that, not all your clients, but all your clients that, there's a real relationship and real business with. With that said, there is a lot of emotional, physical dumping of energy and problems on you. So dealing with my own shit, you have to compartmentalize it. And you have to, put on your business face, put on your big boy suit, and it's game day. And it's game day every single day of the week. It's game day at least 5 days out of the week. Sometimes more, sometimes a little less. But, you have to be at your best all the time. And people are judging you and are thinking, you can have one bad interaction, one slip, one mistake, I guess, one where you forget that relationship and you forget that it's all, even though it's constant and it's always going on, you can forget that, you can be fired at any moment. And when you forget that and you make mistakes like that, it can cost you an entire relationship and all the business from that going forward and so you do have to be on all the time, and you have to be willing to accept responsibility for other people's actions and other people's problems while still maintaining your composure. I think not to inflate the broker ego too much, but there is something along the lines of like a professional athlete when it comes to that, where I've seen guys that go out and get absolutely shit-faced and then run into clients or meet up with clients, and they're just like, nah. I'm not saying you have to be professional all the time. That's definitely not it. But that just, maybe it's their real self, or maybe they're just dealing with shit in their lives and things come up. But I think that's a differentiator between like the really great and not, is when you see people who are dealing with their own brokers, who are dealing with their own problems, let that bleed too much into their life, their business life, and into their professional life. One, I don't know if this is a real indicator, but it's something I always think about. When people hang up the phone, I think a lot of times when someone hangs up the phone, their real view of the phone call or the importance of it or the whatever comes out in the last second of how they say goodbye. So a lot of times, like, you call someone and then you'll have your conversation to go, okay, bye. Or like, okay, thanks, bye. Like, something like that, where it's like a moment their shield has been lifted. I usually don't say anything when I hang up. I just hang up, generally speaking. Learned that from my dad. He's done that to me my whole life. But, there's indicators of this is a people business, and understanding people and how they interact and communicate and picking up on subtle details is the business, as well as managing your own psychology and personality. And, one of the ways I do that is I will say what the thing is, that I'm dealing with, to give people an opportunity or to, basically to give an excuse for myself. I'll say I'm a grumpy boy today, or sorry, I've got whatever the thing is that I'm dealing with. Maybe I'll answer the call and I'll say, hey, I'm very short for time. I've got a hectic day, but I'm here to help. What's up? Something like that, where I try to communicate as well what's going on with me, and I think that's important too, because nobody is an iron trap. Things come out. Feelings come out. It's like Tourette's. You can't hold it all in. So by giving people a read of where you're at in the world, or when you're not performing at your best, and to let them know that they shouldn't expect you to, I think is fine. Nobody expects you to be an Olympian athlete all the time. But it is the danger of communication and the fact that we're on email 24/7 and we're on call. Probably don't pick up the phone 24/7. Depends on the client or what the thing is, but you're on call, whether it's vacation, you want to see the most annoying sight in the world. Go on a trip with 10 brokers and just during the week, or let's say Friday or Thursday, and 90% of those guys will be on the phone the entire time. Or will be working on some deal or some crisis or something. That's fucking annoying. I'm not saying it has to be like that all the time, but when you're on, you're on. And today, I'm not really feeling that on.